Hello, I'm James Irving. I'm a lawyer in Australia. Today's presentation was supposed to have two other attendees, but unfortunately they were not able to come. All right, so from the legal industry's point of view, smart contracts are like a new technology. The idea that you can automate processes that are occurring in contracts isn't new. Contract payments, for example, say a rent payment to a landlord, that sort of thing has been automated manually. Like you can set up payments to be deducted out of bank account A and shifted to bank account B. And this kind of thing has been done, for years and years. The innovation that is created by marrying a legal contract to software is that these kinds of things are now being automated automatically. The software is integrated with the legal part. Unfortunately, from the legal side, the concept of a contract doesn't really understand something that is changing constantly. And I can give you an example. For example, in Scrum development for software, developers often create new iterations of their specs for the software they're developing on a daily basis. From a legal point of view, that kind of thing creates issues. If there's a dispute about a contract and you end up in court, the judge is going to say, what is the contract? What did you agree to create? And if the thing that you've agreed to create is changing on a daily basis, then it's going to create an evidentiary issue. The judge is going to have to go back over every email, every text message, and try to figure out what is it that the two people agreed to do. And the reason this is such a headache from the legal point of view is that the legal technology, if you want to call it that, is something from an earlier era where people were agreeing to buy and sell things, and it was all described in writing, and and people knew exactly what they were doing. They were buying a house that was located at a certain address, and so that's a good example. You can imagine, for example, that if the house was changing every day, and one day there'd be two doors at the front, next day there'd be one door, the day after that there'd be two chimneys on top of the roof, stuff like that, then it would become quite complex to sort of unravel that in a legal setting. And so there's the kind of difficulties that are presented from the legal side by software development, by lots of other examples or scenarios. Blockchain can bring a kind of certainty to that, and that's why smart contracts is really has become, for the legal industry, a kind of new frontier that they can now integrate this kind of sort of changing real world scenario and integrate it into a old-fashioned concept, which is a static legal agreement that has certain defined quantities in it. And so the slide I've got up at the moment, it's a definition which says a smart contract is one in which every resource can be uniquely identified. Now that would require some consistency in the legal side. So if you had a lease that was a smart contract, then the landlord would be one of the variables, the tenant. So if you brought in a subtenant, then that would add another party, the amount of the rent, the amount of the outgoings, all this kind of thing. Anyone that's listening to this that has a lease would know that it's very, very easy for landlords and tenants to have disputes. And one of the advantages, I think, of smart contracts will be that it will reduce the scope for disputes between parties, because the sorts of things that can go wrong, the uncertainty will be eliminated or reduced anyway. This is a list of benefits of smart contracts, and this is just taken generally from examples that I've seen by doing research. The number one benefit from a lawyer's point of view is automation, transaction speeds. I think a lot of the people that are promoters of blockchain and smart contracts do say that the transactions are very quick, and they are on the blockchain, but very often the verification process that has to occur before you have a transaction can be slow. So for example, if you wanted to sell a house on the internet, you know, say on a real estate platform, surely you would want to know that the person owned the house before you bought it. So that would mean that they would have to get their title deeds and somehow scan them and get them verified and all that kind of thing. But once you're actually on the platform and all those verification processes that occurred, then the transaction itself would be fairly instantaneous. So there's a kind of slowing down that occurs when the blockchain world interacts with the old school kind of world of land registries and courthouses and all that kind of stuff. Another benefit is simplification, where you can reduce the involvement of extra actors. If we go back to that house example, then it would be necessary to actually interact with the land registry if you had already verified that the person who's selling the house owns it. You would theoretically lower costs because any kinds of payments that were made via the blockchain would have reduced overheads. And then there's the transparency and verifiability issue. Basically, what happens with the legal application of blockchain is that if a blockchain application simplifies a transaction, then the legal underpinnings of that transaction can be adapted to incorporate the blockchain solution. So that's kind of, for a lawyer, a smart contract is a contract that's got a software integration. For a software developer, a smart contract may simply mean a program that includes a transaction. And there are examples of current smart contract uses that I've got here in this slide. In this conference, there have been many discussions, and there's still some to go, of brilliant applications of smart contracts and blockchain. I don't really need to elaborate on this, but these are areas which traditionally have been very heavy in terms of legal documentation. For example, real estate, anyone who's bought or sold a house knows there's a lot of paperwork to be filled out, and applications and all kinds of things, bank loans and all kinds of stuff. Logistics is really a nightmare. If you can imagine a ship with hundreds of containers on it, hundreds of ships going all over the world, dropping the containers at different ports, and at each step in the chain, those containers have to be tracked and maybe customs documentation completed. Traditionally, that has been a very bureaucratic process. Sometimes, in some places, these containers are sitting for a long time before people are able to get them released because of the slowness of the government bureaucracy. all of that can be speeded up, and has been, and you know, we've seen some great benefits. From a lawyer's perspective, I can see that sometimes it needs the law to be changed. Sometimes there have to be legislative developments, and that's been discussed as well at this conference. The law needs to accommodate new technologies. The uptake of smart contracts by lawyers depends a bit on their being aware that these tools and resources are available. A lot of them don't know yet. It's still a very new thing in the legal profession. It seems strange that here we've been speaking, you know, people have been discussing at a very high level for a couple of days now at the hackathon how smart contracts are being deployed and developed and all kinds of stuff. Most lawyers wouldn't know what a smart contract is. They've never used one. They may have read something about them in some newsletter, but it hasn't penetrated to everyday use among lawyers, but it will eventually. And there are obviously lots of very impressive tools and resources which are being deployed and which are being discussed at this very conference, such as the ones I've got up on the screen right now. Legal issues with smart contracts. Because they're new, the law hasn't really entirely understood how to deal with them. So one of the presentations today was about how the SEC is dealing with the issue of whether a cryptocurrency is a security or not. That's one example. With a smart of the law, as an example of the law trying to catch up with technology. With smart contracts, there's a doubt whether computer code, which is integrated into a written contract, is even part of the contract. It's not legible by lawyers and judges. So what is it? These kinds of issues have to be hammered out, probably through new laws, new legislation, but also sadly in court cases, because court cases mean people are tied up arguing about things and spending a lot of money on stuff that maybe they'd prefer not to be doing. But that's how the system works, where people have a disagreement about something and then they go to court. And the disagreements are much more likely to happen if the law is unclear or if the law is just simply not there, which is the case with something that's brand new. Sometimes I give people an example, which is, imagine that someone invented a flying car. What would that be? Would it be a motor vehicle, or would it be a plane? If it's a plane, does a person need a pilot's license? If it's a motor vehicle, they would need presumably a driving license. What about the invention, the machine? Does it have to comply with civil aviation regulations, or does it just have to comply with motor vehicle regulations? The law doesn't know. It's a brand new thing. The law is just confused. And then something terrible happens, someone crashes their flying car, someone gets sued, and suddenly the court is faced with this this situation that's never confronted before, it has no real guidance on, and maybe it comes up with an answer that people aren't very happy with. But this is kind of the way it works in the legal system. It sort of evolves, and I think it's very important, and we've seen it at this conference, for people in the development side of blockchain and smart contracts to interact carefully with legislators, with lawyers, and to explain to them what are the issues that need to be addressed, what are the problems that the law as it's currently constituted create for them. And I think by doing that kind of thing, we probably will see the law catch up and create a better environment for blockchain developers to work in. Certainly, I've got a lot of clients who are tech entrepreneurs, software developers, people like that. And I enjoy working with them, but it often surprises them when I explain to them that certain things they would like to do are just not allowed under the current legal system. They have to, I try to work with them to find a solution that is suitable for them, that they can live with. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of my brief chat. I'm grateful to be part of the conference, and I thank all the conference organisers.